It is a very interesting sight to watch a transformer blow up. I mean, if you've seen it, it's quite spectacular. When you see videos of tornadoes coming through, for instance, and they show it across the horizon, and you see those explosions over there, and then as it travels over there, and as it travels over there, there's something happening there that's pretty spectacular. A lot of damage, a lot of bad things, but those explosions are pretty spectacular. Now, the reason that happens is because there's a whole lot of stuff happening inside that metal container. Now, I am not an electrician. In fact, electricity scares me to death. Daryl came over to the house and he was working on something with electricity. And I said, "You want me to turn it off first?" He goes, "I'll be all right." I said, "Whoa." I mean, sometimes I just want to turn the main off to the house before I do any electric work. Just turn everything off so I'd be sure that I got it. Because once you've been bitten by electricity and you don't like it, it does not feel good. So I don't know anything about electricity. So I did a little reading just to figure out just enough to be really dangerous in about what I'm about to tell you. Apparently what's going on is this. Inside that box, the energy that is coming in cannot be used as it comes in. It has to be changed in order to be usable by the house. That's what's going on. So inside, this flow of energy comes in as one thing. And inside there, something happens. Almost miraculous. Certainly unseen to the naked eye. And when it comes out, that stuff powers everything that makes our lives wonderful. And it's all inside that little box. We are going to address on a few Sundays in a row this concept of changing to be like Jesus. And we begin with this concept today. God has provided us in His Word, the passage just read, there are two options: conforming or transforming. And what He has done in this verse is He set them up and He said, these are competing. It is conforming versus transforming. It's the perfect time, really, to talk about this competition because there's some big competition today, right? It's the Super Bowl. And one team competing against the other team. Now, these two teams, I don't care a thing about. I really don't. So it's hard to get energized about this thing. But you take those people who have a rooting interest. They are going to get all consumed by this event. And there's not a true fan on either side of those teams who would say, I'm for my team, but if your team wins, that's okay with me. They're not going to say that because this is a competition. This is one against the other. You can't have both. That's what Paul says. It's conforming or it's transforming. You got to take your pick. Let's look at them. Do not be conformed. That word is only used one other time in the New Testament. It is used in 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 14. If you want to turn over there for just a minute. And I want you to understand, I want us to understand this word conforming by what is said in this verse. Notice how he puts it. As obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts as in your ignorance. Look at what he said. Don't you start conforming. Don't you be a conforming person. Then he tells us what that means. Number one, it means, according to this verse, not conforming yourselves. To conform is to be self-guided. I'm going to guide myself. I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to do what I want to do. I am going to take care of my situation by myself. Self-guided. Number two, it is self-centered. Not conforming yourselves to your former lusts. In other words, I don't want you to be a conformist, one who says, I'm going to do what I want to do, just like I've always done. He's addressing people here whom he is trying to get to change. And he says, don't you continue the path of conforming by being self-centered. Your former lusts. I've always been this way. I like being this way. I'm going to keep being this way. He said it won't work because he calls it, number three, as in your ignorance, self-taught. Why are you ignorant? Because you taught yourself without the aid of anybody else. You took it upon yourself to say, here is how you can be educated. I will be educated from my own mind. But he says you can't do that. That's ignorance. So the place that you are, you can't stay there. Don't keep conforming to that. Don't be self-guided and self-centered and self-taught. That's the idea behind do not be conformed. But number two, be transformed. Be transformed. Look at 2 Corinthians now, chapter 3 and verse 18. Now we learn something about what he means and what he says in this transforming idea. Here is the concept. Here's where this word is used in another place, the word transform, used in this verse. Look at verse 18. But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of the Lord. Here's what he says about transforming. Number one, it is Lord guided. Lord guided. We're looking in it like a mirror at the glory of the Lord. That's what we're concentrating on. He is the one guiding us. It is Lord guided. Number two, it is God centered. We're being changed into that image from glory to glory. When Jesus said in his prayer in John 17, Father, give me the glory that I had with you before time was. Glorify my name, God said. I will, and I have. Because the glory of Jesus came from the glory of his Father. And when we are being changed into that image from glory to glory, We are centering our lives around God. God-centered. Number 3, just as by the Spirit of the Lord. To be transformed is to be Spirit taught. It didn't take much, right, for you to see the contrast there, did it? If you're going to be conformed, it's all about you. It's selfishness. That's what it is. But if you're going to be transformed, it's selflessness. And it's all about Him. We can't have both. Can't happen. Cannot happen. That energy coming into that transformer on the pole that can't be used until it's transformed. You can't say, I tell you what, for today, I'd like to have about 75% of that transformed stuff, and I want 25% of that other stuff. I just want to see what it'll do. I have a suspicion you don't want to see what it will do. You can't have it. It's not like we can bargain with somebody to say, I'll have this type of energy, this percentage, and I'll have this type, this percentage. Just sort of branch it off the transformer. Put some of it to go around and come on. Won't happen. That's why he says it's a competition. He says it's conformed versus transformed. He doesn't say you can have 35% of conformed and you can have 65% of transformed. It won't work. It's one or the other. But what does a transformed life look like? Well, think about it from the electrical thing one more time. We know what it looks like coming out of the transformer. And apparently, these waves of electricity, they actually change. And some are slower and some are faster. And we know electrically what it looks like coming out to be able to be used. But we also know what it does. And I'll tell you when we know what it does the most. When we don't have it anymore. Then we know, oh yeah, I like that stuff. It's amazing. It's the first time I'd ever been out of the country. I'd done it twice to Guyana. I had never been to a place that did not have electricity. And that's weird. That's just really weird. You don't have electricity? I mean, there are no lines running through the trees. There are no satellite dishes to bring in ESPN. It's just not there. Now, as they start trying to get it there are things that are happening. But the point is, while there, one of the toughest adjustments was to figure out everything I used to be doing during this time, and I'm not doing it anymore. None. There's no electric water heater. Well, I know it's on the equator, but I still don't like a cold shower in the morning like that. It's not even a shower. It's a bucket. You just have a bucket, you walk down there, you draw out a bucket, and you take it and you pour it on your head. That's a shower. No, thank you. You see, when we don't have something, now we know how much we miss it. It works with Jesus same way. What does it look like? Here's what I found interesting. Matthew chapter 17. Matthew chapter 17 uses this word transformed and I did not know it. I'd never thought about this before, never figured it out. But in this passage that you know quite well, starting in verse 1, Jesus decided he's going up on a high mountain. He took Peter, James, and John with him. And notice verse 2. And as he was transfigured, same word, he was transformed before them. His face shone like the sun. His clothes became as white as the light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and suddenly a voice came from the cloud saying, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. I wonder, I've always wondered, why does the Bible include the story of the transfiguration of Jesus? I mean, it's not about a recharging. I mean, he was glowing, and it's not like his power of Godhead being on the earth sort of run out, so he plugged back in, and God put him back up there, and he powered him back up again. It's not what he's talking about. And there's nothing else that happens after this. Well, they don't talk about it much. It's just happened. Boom, there it was, and it's over. Maybe it's because of this word transformed. Because in it, I'm supposed to see the same word that he would later use in Romans 12. Be transformed. So what am I supposed to see? Number one, it's public. He did it right in front of them. Transformation can't take place in private. Meaning, you cannot say, oh, I'm a changed person, and nobody knows it. I've been transformed. You what? You're no different than anything I've ever seen you do. That's not transformation. Number two, it's personal. His face was shining. His clothes were glowing. Transformation is personal. It happens in your life and in my life. It happens to us. It's not just something that's over here that we just go and grab and put on every now and then. It's not like getting a rental car. I think I'm going to go to church and rent some transformation. And so I drive up in my transformation rental. And then when I leave, we have a spot in the back, and you just park it there, and you go on home, and there you go. No. It's personal. It affects you. It affects me every day of our lives. Number three, it's pleasing to God. After this event, what happens? The sky opened up, and the Father said, this is my Son in whom I am well pleased. Why was he pleased? Because he was the transformed person that he ought to be. And when I decide I'm going to transform to be like Jesus, in a symbolic way, I think, the heavens open up and God says, it's my child, and I'm well pleased. But finally, number four, it looks like this. It's powerful. Man, they saw this and they heard all this, and they fell down on the ground. They were afraid. When in the Old Testament, when the children of Israel came to Mount Sinai after leaving Egypt, and God said, gather around the mountain. And as they did, they sat there and listened. And all of a sudden, from the mountain, They heard the voice of God as he quoted by memory the 10 Commandments. They couldn't take it. The Bible says that they were afraid and fearful, and they said, man, no more. Moses, you go up there and get that stuff from him, and you come tell us about it. We can't listen to him anymore. That's fearful. Here's the point. In the presence of God, when we recognize exactly who he is and what he is, there is a fear and a reverence and an awe that ought to surround us. It's powerful to see that kind of transformation in the life of someone else. Right now, maybe you can think of someone that you watched go through a transformation. They were doing all these kinds of things and living this kind of life, and then because of the transformation process, they flipped it, and now they're over here. And they're living exactly opposite of that. That's what transformation looks like. Let's summarize it this way. Here is why it's a competition. Here is why we cannot pick and choose pieces and parts of conforming and transforming. Here's why. Number one, the goals butt heads. The goal of conforming is this. Here it is. To appear to be the same. Conforming to this over here, I want to appear to be the same. On the outside looking at it, it looks the same. But you know what the goal of transforming is? To be the same. Do you want that electricity coming out of the transformer that sort of looks like the kind you're going to use in your house? Or do you want it to be what you're going to use in your house? That's the idea. Here's another clash. The process involved. The process involved. In conforming, it's this: compromise without reservation. Whatever I have to do, compromise to look good, to feel good, everybody say you're okay, and to have this appearance on, that's okay. But in transforming, it's surrender without reservation. Those aren't the same. You want to compromise with the world? Appearing to have on the coat of Christianity? Or are you trying to surrender your life to wear the life of Jesus? That's the problem. And finally, third, the results don't match. Here's what you have in conforming. You have connection without conviction. Oh yeah, we're together, we look alike, we're doing all right, everything's, and yet down deep, you don't believe that. You're not really committed to it, and if something else comes along better, you're going to drop it like a hot potato. That's what conforming does. It says just make that connection without any kind of conviction. But the result of a transformed life is a commitment without hesitation. Lord, I don't know what you have in store for me. I don't know what you want to have happen in my life. Next year, 5 years, or 10 years. But whatever it is, Lord, I'm on your side. Without the slightest hesitation. That's where I'm headed. Conformed versus transformed. And here's the deal. If you're totally conformed to the world, you got a problem. If you're trying to play the field and bargain with partials of both, you got a problem, same problem. They are the same. The only way to be right, the only way to be in a position that God is pleased is to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and complete will of God. Today, God calls us to transformation. It begins with adopting the mind of Jesus, Philippians 2 and verse 5. And his mind was, whatever the Lord wills is what I'll do. And here's what the Lord has willed, that you believe in the Son whom he sent, who mirrored the transformed life. And when you believe in that and you accept that, then you say, Lord, I will do whatever I need to do to be that. And in baptism, he takes that old life away and gives you the new one that you can begin transforming fully into the image of his Son. And sometimes when that transformer goes bad, you got to recharge it. They put up new ones all the time. A Christian once transformed is doing well, sometimes has a problem. Put up a new one, start over, come on back, because the Lord is gracious. Today, are you ready and in need of our help to transform? You may come and let us know as we stand.